hello Facebook, hello YouTube, how is everybody? Welcome back to my kitchen. It is the start of Love British Food Fortnight, so I am really fortunate to be an ambassador for Love British Food, and every September they have a fortnight dedicated to really promoting the best of British farmers and growers and the people who provide our food security, who make delicious things, everything from farming to crops to all the things that we eat and enjoy on a daily basis. So it's a real focus on how we can better support our own homegrown growers. So I've got recipes all over Liz Earle Wellbeing this week and next, specifically focusing on British produce, British ingredients, farm shops, all that kind of thing. And so today I thought I'd kick off with a really delicious dessert, and it's something that is made actually by one of our magazine contributors. If you have the magazine, you will note, this is the current one, selling really fast, by the way, guys, on subscription. Only a few copies remaining in print if you want that in print. But if you look, we always have a recipe index here, so that gives you all the recipes that are in any particular issue. And there is a really great recipe writer and photographer called Nico, and he makes amazing things for us, and he's done quite a lot of our recipes. And even during lockdown, he was working with us because he was not only devising the recipes and creating them, but he was also photographing them. So he became our photographer as well. So it's amazing kind of what you can do, isn't it, when you turn your hand to it. Anyway, this is one of his recipes, and it is available for everybody, completely free. You don't have to have the magazine to look at this one. And this is on the Liz Earle Wellbeing website. So Amy, I know you're manning Facebook and YouTube today. Hello, lovely one. Thank you for doing that. There will be a link that Amy will pop up on Facebook. If you want to get the recipe, you'll find that on lizearlewellbeing.com. And also we've popped it onto Linktree for everybody watching on Instagram, so you will be able to find it there. But it's quite straightforward. I'll talk us through it as we go. As always, Amy is sending through the questions that are coming in to me. Oh, right, okay, just a very quick one. This is from YouTube. Hi there, nice to have your questions as well. Saying, just me making some kombucha. That's maybe from my Good Gut box, I don't know, but that offer is still going. So don't forget, you can get that 6 of your favourite ferments in the carefully curated Good Gut box. Maybe, Amy, you can pop a link up to that as well if you like. And you say, it's been 5 days, tastes okay. Seems to have a very thin SCOBY growing on top. Is that right? It's quite see-through. Yes, absolutely. You've got the beginnings. You've got your baby SCOBY growing. So that's what happens. So basically, when you start with your SCOBY, which looks a bit like a kind of a flat, opaque pancake, and you feed it that lovely warm sweet tea, and that's when it starts to ferment, and it will start to grow another one on top. So it starts off as this sort of fine, thin layer, and then that'll gradually thicken up, and then eventually split into 2 after a couple of weeks. And then you'll have 2 SCOBYs. And then you can go on and make 2 batches of kombucha. And then after 2 weeks, you'll have 4 SCOBYs. And before you know it, you'll have a whole population of SCOBYs that you'll have to give away or, do something with. Anyway, another quick question here from Maggie, also on YouTube. Hi, hope you're watching today. Saying, when making yoghurt at home, are you able to freeze some yoghurt to start another batch at a later date? That's a really interesting question. I've never tried. I mean, obviously I use yoghurt for things like frozen ice cream. And I have heard that when you freeze things like kefir, you can freeze the grains and then that sends them to sleep to reactivate them. So I would imagine the same would be true. Why not try it and see how you get on? Let me know. I would love to know for sure. So let's get going with this recipe because it's going to take me a little while, so I thought if I just got stuck into it, and then I can come back and answer a few more questions. So you will find it, as I say, online. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these beauties. So I picked these this morning. Isn't that just so gorgeous? I had to leave his leaves on because I just thought he just looked so lovely. So I've got a couple of pears and a couple of apples. This one, obviously, this was a windfall, clearly been enjoyed by somebody else. Anyway, I thought that's fine because I can just trim around it and then chop it up. Because what you want to do is take a couple of apples and a couple of pears. I'm using obviously British grown fruit because that's the whole point of Love British Food Fortnight. So I've got some of my apples here, and Bramleys are really good. You can use Braeburn. You know, you really want the old-fashioned varieties that actually have really good taste. They taste of something. You can also use cookers, and I've got a few cookers in here as well, little gnarled cookers. So they work really well. So it's a bit like a crumble. Let me just tell you the real name of it if you're looking it up online. It is called, what you're looking for is the cinnamon, apple and pear pots. So it's kind of a grand title for a crumble, but that's pretty much what it is. So I've put into my saucepan here, I've got some chopped up apples and pears. So I am going to heat those up on my hob. All being well, that will work. Let me pop that over there. And then you're just going to simmer those really with a little bit of water. So pop that in. Little bit of sugar, not much. I mean, look, for all those apples and pears, I'm just using, it's like a tablespoon. And it depends really on the sweetness of your apples, because some varieties are sweeter than others. Obviously, cooking apples might need a little bit more sugar because they can be a bit more tart. And then this is a secret ingredient, okay? This is nutritional yeast. And I'm going to pop these in. So that's about the same, it's about a tablespoon. And give that a stir, and then I'll pop the lid on and just let it simmer, because you really want those bits just to cook down first. So I'll get those all nicely coated. Pop the lid on. Hopefully that heat is coming on. Let me just check. Yep, that is coming on nicely. There we go. So that will be maybe 10 minutes or so, and I can really smell that sort of yeasty, sugary flavour. And the nutritional yeast is great to use, because if you are cooking for any plant-based eaters or vegans, absolutely you've got to have your B12, and so nutritional yeast is an absolute must-have, and it's a very good dietary source of vitamin B12, and it tastes really good. It's got that really sort of yeasty, flavour-enhancing just flavour, that taste that you can add to savoury dishes, you can add it to sweet dishes like this. And it has a kind of a cheesy, nutty flavour, and you can just chuck it into everything really, and it does give you a decent amount of vitamin B12, which is really helpful. So what else has it got in here? Oh, excuse me, I've got the itchy nose. It says it is a rich source of B vitamins and minerals, and it says it's a natural food grown on molasses, so they grow it on sugar. And it is an inactive yeast, entirely free from Candida albicans. I know a lot of people are kind of frightened when they see the word yeast. You think, oh, it's going to create a yeast infection and Candida and all of that. But no, this is not linked to that, so it's considered safe. And it says here that you can dissolve it in water, milk, fruit, vegetable juices, sprinkle on soup, stews, casseroles, salads, breakfast cereals, all sorts to enhance the flavour. And I just thought, you know what, this is, you know, we're getting into that season, aren't we, when we want to find little ways to feel better, to be stronger, to add things in that are going to help to fortify us. So I popped a link. Amy, I don't know whether you've seen, but there's a link on Linktree that we've done for this, because this is something that I always have, even though I'm not a vegan. I'm not, you know, I mean, I do eat a lot of plant food, but, you know, I'm definitely eating lots of animal produce as well. But I will still use this as an extra way of giving flavour with getting some nutritional fortification as well, which is what it's all about, being strong and fortified. A few of you commented here on what I'm wearing. So yes, this is my gym kit. I was just a little bit busy, so I just thought, you know what, they're not going to mind if I stay in my kit. This is Asquith. And this is my latest top, actually. I really like it. I really like the cut. I find it very forgiving. It comes down quite low, and it's got this seam here, which is quite flattering, I think, because it kind of pulls you in a little bit here. And don't forget, you do get still 15% of everything on the Asquith website. You just put Liz Loves in capitals. And they are a British brand, female founder-led brand, as you know. It's another brand that I do really genuinely like, because their things last and last and last. This is a style that I've had probably for at least 3 or 4 seasons, and they wash and they wear really well, so I'm very happy to give them a shout out. Now let's get back to this crumble. I should probably show you actually what it's going to look like at the end, because I did make one earlier just to check that I had all the ingredients and it was all going to work well. Now, I like to do this in 2 ways. You can either make one big dish and have it like a crumble, Or you can get lots of little pretty pots. These are some that I brought back from my travels in Greece one year. I think I had 6 of them. I think I've only got 2 left now, sadly. They're really pretty, aren't they? Or you could use little ramekins. You could use clear ramekins. I've got little white dishes here. Or I've got, I think I had 2 of these, but I can't find the other one. Just these little pretty, little dishes that you might have for all sorts of reasons. So you can either do individual ones, so really nice if you've got, a couple of friends coming for supper maybe, or just want to serve something in a small dish, or you can pop the whole lot into a dish this sort of size, and basically I'm going to create the apple and pear mixture underneath. Then I'm going to make an amazing spiced, healthy, crumbly topping, which is all crunchy and full of immune boosting spices. So I'm using cinnamon, I'm using cloves, I've got allspice, some cardamom going on there, and pumpkin seeds, and then I'm making a cinnamon custard that goes on the top. Now you can serve it separately, but what I like to do is actually put the cinnamon custard on the top. So this is layered, so you've got the apples and pears, then you've got your crumbly bit, then you put your cinnamon custard over the top, let that soak in, and then you sprinkle it with a little bit more of the crumble. So it is really, really, really good. So that's what I like about doing all these cookery demos. It's a really good excuse to make delicious things that I can then eat with the family later on. So let's get going with the crumble topping. So I've got here, you can use pretty much any flour of your choice. I'm just using whole wheat spelt flour. But if you wanted to be gluten-free, then absolutely, you could use a gluten-free flour, or you could use a rye flour. You could use oats that you have just given a little bit of a grind up in a food processor if you want. I'm adding some butter into that, but if you wanted to be completely vegan, you could make that, of course, with coconut oil. But I really think the butter adds a bit of goodness. Who listened, by the way, to Dr. Simon Dial, who was talking all about fish oils and fats? Wasn't that fascinating? And particularly what I found fascinating was hearing all about the versions that we need to have, the ratios of good fat in our diet. And butter I count as a good fat. It's solid at room temperature, it's very stable, it contains butyric acid, which has been shown to be very protective in the gut. I've got a whole podcast coming up on that, so that's another reason why we should be embracing eating lots of butter. It's certainly never been out of my kitchen, even always, during the kind of margarine years when we were battling all of that, processed synthetic stuff. I still kept going with the butter, so I would always use that for cooking. So, but I thought what was really interesting, talking to Simon, and if you haven't yet listened, you'll find it on the Friday 5. Apologies to all those who were waiting patiently for the Friday 5 on Friday. Actually didn't go live until Saturday morning this week. We had a technical glitch, which meant that the file didn't get uploaded properly on Friday, so we then had to go into the systems and reload it. And honestly, there's always something, isn't there? There's always something, just as you think. You just got it all sorted and it's all going well. And then the techie stuff kind of lets you down. Anyway, very many thanks to several of you who messaged me to say, where's the Friday 5? We can't find it. And then we realised that it hadn't actually, we thought it had loaded our end, but then we went into the system, we could see that it hadn't loaded. Oh, this is bubbling away nicely. So I might have to turn that down a bit. Yeah, this is really softening. So in here, just a reminder, if you're joining me late, I've got my chopped apples, my chopped pears to celebrate Love British Food fortnight, which has just started. And I'm mixing that with just a little bit of water to soften it, a little tiny touch of sugar, and a spoonful of that nutritional yeast, which is really giving it quite a strong, flavourful aroma coming into my kitchen right now. I'm going to just pop that saucepan lid back on just so that it simmers down nicely, but I will turn it down a little bit so it doesn't burn. Okay, so, yes, sorry, I was talking about Simon Dial, wasn't I, on the podcast? So if you haven't listened, he's this week's Friday 5, which went live on Saturday, so it'll be the latest podcast on your podcast app. I hope you've all subscribed to the podcast, because they just sort of tick along, they just trickle in. And if you're in the car, or if you're traveling, or you've just, I don't know, in the bath, or just taking time out. I know lots of you go for dog walks and you pop your earphones in and have a listen to the podcast. So the Friday Five is always a shorter one. I try and do that every Friday unless things get totally manic. And I've now often invited a guest on just to clarify something, real specialist. And so he was talking all about the data showing how incredibly beneficial fish oils are. And this came up because there'd been a little bit of controversy, some misreporting, linking fish oils to prostate cancer, which, having spoken to Simon and looking at the data, we now know is completely untrue. And in fact, quite the reverse, that fish oils seem to be incredibly protective. Oh my goodness, 40% boosting our immunity from cancers and things. So really, really interesting. Plus all the good brain fats that we know about. So particularly DHA, but also EPA, these omega-3 oils. So we had a real discussion about that, and I'd love you to listen to it because I thought he was fascinating. And it's so funny because he's such an academic, and he's worked in this area, which he calls PUFA, which is polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's his life's work, basically, looking particularly at their interaction in the brain and health. So he's a nutritional academic neuroscientist. And when I was talking about my podcast at the weekend, I popped a little thing on my stories about it, and I thought, well, I'll tag him so that he knows that I've mentioned him. Couldn't find him anywhere. He's just not on social media. He's obviously just not bothered. He's not on Instagram, couldn't find him on Twitter. No, he's just, doing his work and carrying on with it. Isn't that so great? Anyway, he very generously joined me. And while I had him on the end of the line, I wanted to ask a few other questions as well. So I asked him about walnuts, because a lot of people say, oh, I eat walnuts because they've got omega-3s. And yes, they do. However, there is a catch. Omega-3, yes, you find that in walnuts, but they're also very high in omega-6s. And what Simon was explaining on the podcast is it's the ratio, the balance between our omega-6s and our omega-3s that we need to get right, because we overeat our omega-6s hugely. That's all the seed oils. So sunflower, corn, safflower, all those highly polyunsaturated oils that we've always been told are so good for us, actually are very highly linked to inflammation. So we need to be having far, far fewer of those. And here in the Western world, because when you think about it, all our processed food is very high in both seed oils and sugars. And those are the two things that we really need to look at reducing. So although walnuts, great, good source, when you look at it on paper, you think, oh yes, lots of omega-3s, I'll get my omega-3s that way. Two problems. One is they're also very high in omega-6s, so that's knocking out your ratio. And secondly, from the plant sources, we don't tend to convert very well. We don't tend to convert the omega-3s into the DHA that we need for brain, which is why if you're not somebody who eats fish, for example, or takes fish oils, then you really need to make sure that your fish oil supplement or your DHA supplement is coming from an algae source. And a lot of vegans and vegetarians find that acceptable because algae is not a sentient creature, and so that way they can get their DHA. But really, really important, because a lot of people will take flaxseed oil thinking that it's high in DHA and that's going to give them the nutrient that they need, but it doesn't convert well in the body. So if you are somebody who's relying on supplements for your DHA, please make sure they are at least algae based, or preferably fish oil based. And since listening to Simon, I do take my fish oils, but I'm not religious about it. I'll go through phases where I'll have them in the fridge, and I certainly give them to my children always, because I'm thinking, brains, must make sure that they get theirs. And they're a little bit fussier eaters. They're not perhaps the kids who are going to eat fish all the time, whereas I will often choose to eat fish, or I'll make a tuna salad or something like that. They not so much. So I do always make sure that they have their fish oils. But now, since listening to Simon, it's like, right, absolutely, I'm going to go back. I'm going to have my fish oils too. So talking about flaxseed, I'm going to get back now to making my crumble topping. So in here, I've just got my flour, whichever flour you choose. I've used a spelt, a whole wheat spelt flour, just again for a bit of nutritional goodness. I'm going to add a little bit of soft brown sugar, So that's going in there. And then, speaking of flax seeds, I'm going to use some flax seeds, or linseeds as they're otherwise known. Now these are cracked, or you can mill them, you can grind them up in a food processor, because in order to release their goodness and the good oils and the beneficial value of flax seeds or linseeds, you do need to crack them. Otherwise they just swell up inside you and pass through you. So, you know, they're doing a bit of good, they're providing a bit of bulk, which is good, kind of easing things through the gut, helping with peristalsis and all of that, so that is a healthy thing. But if you want to release the nutritional value of flax seeds or linseeds, then you do need to grind them. You can buy cracked linseeds. You need to make sure they're kept fresh, because obviously they're high in oil, and if you just keep them, you know, open in a warm cupboard for months and months, they are going to oxidize, because that's what oils do. So I would always recommend keeping your flax seeds in the fridge if you can, just again to help keep them fresh and prevent that oxidation. You don't want your oils to go rancid, obviously, ever. I am now going to take off my fruits. Ow, 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 that was hot. I need to find a cloth, excuse me. Right, turn that off. Yeah, so this is all mushed down really nicely. So you can see all that. I've got my lovely mushy things in there. And what I might do actually is I might start just to build these. So I might take, if I do this little pot, then you can see, because it's a clear one. So I'm going to pop in a generous layer of my apples and pears. Cockney rhyming slang, isn't it? You all know what apples and pears are? I wonder if any of our overseas listeners and watchers know. You can tell me what apples and pears are. So use the first one to get it right. So I'm going to now add to my crumble topping, while that just cools down a bit. I put my flax seeds in. I'm going to add some pumpkin seeds. Love pumpkin seeds, really good bit of crunch. Interestingly, I was talking earlier about prostate cancer and dietary risks. They have done a few studies showing that pumpkin seeds may help to protect against prostate cancer, so I guess all the more reason why we should be eating them. But I just love them for flavour, and they've got lots of minerals in there as well. I'm also adding some just chopped up macadamia nuts. Again, really good for crunch, but you could use almonds. I'm equally fond of almonds. You could use pecans, you could use good old walnuts, you could use Brazil nuts, anything that you fancied. Or if you don't want to use nuts, then you could just leave them out and just have seeds instead. And then there's a few extra Brazil nuts in here as well, just chopped, just roughly chopped. I try and eat a Brazil nut every day. They're full of selenium, so it's a really easy way of getting selenium. You know, I'll always try, if I can, to default to eating the actual foods rather than taking supplements, because when you're taking an isolated supplement, you're not getting all the micronutrients that surround it to increase availability and absorption. So, having created this really good topping mix, I am then going to pop that onto some parchment on a baking tray. Just smooth that out, and then I'm going to bake that in the oven, because you just want this to crisp up. It's a bit like making granola, which reminds me I must make some more of my rose petal nutty granola, because I just love that so much. So there we go. So that is going in the oven, and that leaves me oh, I can't see now, double door fridge for me, sorry. Stairs, Noreen, yes, apples and pears, stairs, top marks. So now I'm going to make the cinnamon custard while that is cooking away. What I might do is just spoon the rest of this mixture into my little dishes. Let's see how many this makes. The recipe, I think, that's online says it serves 4, so I have to say it's 4 generous helpings. So good. So I'm just going to do these 4 little dishes, I think. I'll add that one. Let's go and get some more. Those small dishes, they're just so useful, aren't they? Right, there we go. So that is divided up. The fruit and the granola topping or crispy topping is cooking. So all that's left to do now is to make the cinnamon custard. And this is an egg custard, so I'm making it from scratch, so no custard powder here. Super easy to make custard. What I've done is I've got the milk, And again, I'm using real milk, dairy milk. I always use whole milk, grass-fed. I get it from my local vending machine in glass bottles. We have updated that, so Amy, perhaps you can pop a link, if you wouldn't mind, just on Facebook, and you can find it on lizearlewellbeing.com if you want to find out if there is a milk vending machine near you, because it just stops all that use of single-use plastic containers. You just reuse your glass milk bottles. Or you may be lucky enough to live somewhere where they deliver. I know in London at my studios they haven't started again, but hopefully they will soon. I can get organic milk delivered in glass bottles to the studios, which is really good. So I've got here, this is has been just simmering away. It's milk with some seasoning in it, and these are the seasonings that I've used. So really warming autumnal spices, so good. So I've used a cinnamon stick, which is in there, which I'll rescue in a minute. I'll take that out. I've used whole cardamom. Just give that a little bit of a crush with a knife before you put it in, just to release the flavour. I've used whole cloves, a little pinch of cloves, and some ground allspice. So these are really warming. They're also reputedly antibacterial. They've got lots of health-giving properties, all these delicious spices. And then I've used a little bit of pure vanilla extract. And again, I found a really good one that I use. I've popped a link. You'll find it on Linktree. You can buy it online, and it's not a synthetic, flavour, an artificial flavour. It's the real deal. And actually, I think, Amy, we might have an interview that we ran a couple of years ago with an amazing woman who set up the first ever fair trade Ugandan vanilla farm. And she talks about all the corruption that goes on behind the scenes with growing vanilla pods, because they're so expensive. And her farm would get raided by bandits coming to steal the vanilla, and it was real kind of like vanilla pod wars. So she was amazing, and she spoke quite in depth about the whole backstory really regarding vanilla and real vanilla, and why it's really important to buy good vanilla from good sources. So I love the smell of it, don't you? Vanilla, it's that lovely sort of soft chocolatey smell. They use it in fragrance as well. Vanilla is a classic perfume ingredient. So I have put all those in here into my custard mix. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I think, flick out now the cinnamon stick, and I will give that a little bit of a wash and dry, and I will be able to use that again. And then I'm going to make the actual custard bit, and this is so easy. It's just a little bit of sugar with a little bit of corn flour. So I've just literally put a spoonful of each there. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to mix in some egg yolks, and I've just got two egg yolks, lovely organic egg yolks, naturally this beautiful dark colour. Look at that for a colour, and that just comes from hens, my hens out here that just peck about on grass and are fed organic chicken feed. Of course, one of the sneaky things that the food industry does sometimes, when they're intensively rearing chickens, is they put dye into the chicken feed that dye the egg yolks dark yellow. So when you get them, you think, oh, this is a really lovely healthy egg, and it's just a bit of dye. So it's really worth knowing, isn't it? All the little hints and tricks that some producers get up to. But luckily here in the UK, we've got really high standards of animal welfare, some of the highest in the world, which I very much hope that we keep. So there you go. So that's that lovely colour, and I'm going to add that. You need to be careful not to let it boil, so you just want to simmer it away. I'm going to add that to the spiced cinnamony milk mixture that I've got going on over here. And then you just really keep stirring that, keep watching it really well, which of course is going to be a challenge as I talk to you. I'm going to stir it with one hand, and then you'll find that the egg yolks just thicken up that delicious mixture, so you end up with a fresh egg custard with those delicious spices. And then basically I'm just going to strain that over the top of my little dishes, just so I end up with something like that. So there we go. So that will take probably 5 minutes or so just to thicken. So while I do that, let me go to a few questions. I've got some questions here that I printed out from earlier, plus I think I've got some more here that Amy has given me. That's if my tablet doesn't die. Right, where are we? Okay, Anna on Instagram, you're talking about the benefits of collagen and hyaluronic acid added to food and drinks. Are the benefits worth it? Interesting. I mean, basically, collagen powders, I'm not convinced, because collagen powder will break down into its amino acids by the body. So I guess you're having it in its guaranteed form, but it's not. You're not going to ingest collagen, and that collagen is then not going to suddenly be used as collagen in the skin. What will happen is the collagen that we ingest will get broken down into its component parts, and then those component parts will be used to help build healthy skin, so for example in connective tissue. So I guess it would depend on how deficient you are, but you can obviously get these amino acids from lots of other sources. If it's convenient for you, if it maybe comes with other good things. Hyaluronic acid, I think, is an interesting ingredient to take. Again, it's very good for the skin. We use it topically. I have got some. I've got a bottle of it, and occasionally I will add it into things. It's sometimes hard to judge because I'm often trying lots of different things, and then it's hard to pinpoint. You know, if I was doing like a kind of 6-month fast and then adding in, you know, with no supplements at all, and then adding in hyaluronic acid, I could then maybe see the difference, bearing in mind it takes a month or so for our skin cells to renew themselves and to change. So, you know, you are talking quite a time investment there to see a difference. I guess it's horses for courses, isn't it? I think there is some limited evidence that they work. I haven't seen any major long-term randomised clinical controlled trials. I've seen a few studies conducted by the manufacturers to say that they can help. So yes, I think there's no yes/no answer to that, I'm afraid. I think if I had to kind of sum up with a conclusion, I would say they may be useful. Yeah, they're certainly not going to do any harm. What's the secret to uncrepey arms, Liz? Oh, I hope you're not looking too closely at mine. I think regularly moisturise, definitely. You know, don't skimp. Doing exercise, so I mean, as you know, you've probably seen me do with Michael Gary and my e-guide, A Stronger, Slimmer You. A lot of that is based on upper body work, so, you know, push-ups, just really strengthening the muscle tissue, making sure that we build lots more lean tissue, muscle mass as we get older. You want to preserve your muscle mass. We start to lose it from our 50s onwards. It's really sad. You know, you've got to use it or lose it. So, you know, keep your weight-bearing exercises going, even if you're just, you know, working out with light dumbbells. You know, one of the exercises that Michael gets me to do is to have light weights and just do this. You know, literally just tucking my elbows into my sides and just, you know, keep kind of pumping up, getting the blood flow and helping to tone this area here, and then gradually increasing in weights. I think the weights that I usually use are about 6 kilos in each hand, but you can go up to more. Obviously, you can start with a lot less. You can start with 2.5 kilos. That's quite a good starter weight, I would say. And, you know, crepiness in general, as we get older, don't forget that estrogen plays a massive part in our skin. You know, estrogen is something that, again, is building collagen and elastin fibres within the skin. So by topping up estrogen as we lose it, that's, you know, for me, that was really transformational. You know, I really saw differences in my skin once I started to replace my estrogen. And you can certainly tell, I think, looking at older women, you know, who is replacing their estrogen and who isn't, you know, just by looking at the state of their skin. What nuts would you recommend, please, Liz? Well, I love all nuts, to be honest. I really do. I think we've got a piece online. Amy, can you maybe do a link to it on Facebook? Or you can find it on the website if you just kind of search nuts, all the different properties of nuts and the different values, because they all contain good fats and good minerals and high levels of vitamin E, which is a really good fat soluble vitamin. So I just think nuts are you know, one of nature's real sources of great goodness and bounty for us. Obviously, you know, if you can't eat nuts, then that's a different story. Hopefully you can have some seeds instead, or you might be able to find some varieties. I actually like snacking on peanuts. I like the ones that you find in the shell. So they're plain, don't have roasted peanuts because their fat structure then is changed by heating it. So just plain peanuts. If you can, get them in the shells. And only a few supermarkets seem to do them. I think Lidl, do them, and Tesco's, I think, also do them. Maybe there are other supermarkets. I'd love to know. Please let me know where you find your unshelled peanuts. Because the great thing about snacking on those is it takes time to open the shell. So, you know, if you're sitting there watching a movie or something and having a box set binge night and you've got a big bowl of snacks in front of you, rather than just scoffing a whole load of fried crisps, which, again, using all the inflammatory seed oils you don't want to be doing, but switching to something like plain peanuts, it's taking you a bit of time to get them out of the shells. That's slowing everything down so you eat less. But also they're high in protein and high in minerals and good fats. So you're actually putting a bit of goodness, even though it's a little bit of a treat as well. Lambie on Instagram says, your memory is amazing. Is it HRT? Yes, well, I think it probably is. So I started my HRT journey several years ago now after I wrote my first book, The Good Menopause Guide. And realised that, you know, in my early 50s I was beginning to lack in estrogen, as, you know, so many women obviously do. So I started with estrogen and progesterone, and after a year or so that was going really, really well, and then I threw in testosterone. So normally those are the three hormones that are often used. Testosterone, I know, can be very difficult to get hold of. Some GPs have no problem prescribing it, others find it very difficult. You'll find more information in my e-guide, The Truth About HRT, and obviously on menopausedoctor.co.uk. She's got a very good fact sheet on testosterone. Women produce a lot of testosterone naturally. We actually produce more testosterone from our ovaries than we do estrogen. So, you know, it's very much a female hormone. We tend to think of it as just a male thing. But very much so, it's a female hormone as well. And it's very good for cognitive function. So you ask about my memory, Lammy, on Instagram. And yes, it is. I found that kind of crispness of thinking, that clarity, certainly I got back when I started to replace my testosterone. Only use a tiny bit, little tiny pea-sized amount. And yeah, that just does it for me. Just really does help me to remember stuff. So I think, yeah, it probably is that in answer to your question. More, oh dear, lots of HRT questions, which I won't go down here now, but I will do a bit more later on Friday, okay? I've got a couple here that I wanted just to read out because these are things that were emailed to us. So that's, the email is hq@lizearlewellbeing.com. And it's always lovely to hear your comments and get feedback. So this was an email that came in from Lulafin, and she's talking about the Good Gut box, actually. So I obviously bought the Good Gut box, saying, loving the Villi. Now the Villi is the thin yogurt. When you buy your Good Gut box, you get a choice. The choice of two yogurts. You can either go for the Bulgarian yogurt. Just turn that off because this is thickened up nicely. Do you see how that's become really nice thick custard? Just let that cool for a sec. So you get two choices of the yogurt starter. You either get the Villi, which is the Scandinavian yogurt, which makes a really thin yogurt. So that's really delicious if you want to use your yogurt for pouring. You want to add it to smoothies, you're pouring it onto granola or cereals or into sauces or making yogurt dressings, that kind of thing, or popping it onto soups. To make that lovely little swirly pattern. You know, you can do that with your Villi. The great thing about that is that you don't need a yogurt maker. It's a yogurt. It's super easy to make. It's just basically milk and the Villi powder, and you just leave it overnight. It's cold. If you want a thicker set yogurt, and I know lots of us have talked about this before, then you need to get the Bulgarian yogurt. And the Bulgarian, oh my word, the comments we've had about that, I genuinely think it's the best. It makes the best yogurt I've ever tasted. Genuinely, I absolutely promise you, and lots of you have agreed. So yes, send hearts if you agree with the Bulgarian. It's amazing. It's got such a delicious, creamy, smooth flavour, and you just need to make it somewhere warm. Yeah, loads of hearts coming on Instagram. So you could make it and leave it overnight on a radiator, for example. Now we're getting into the time of year when you may be putting your heating on. You could put it in the airing cupboard, you could leave it on a hot plate. Or you can use a yogurt maker, obviously. I mean, that's the other way to make it, because that keeps your yogurt at a very, very low, stable temperature. overnight, and then it just makes the most delicious creamy yogurt. And so if you have a look on the Good Gut box, if you head to lizearlewellbeing.com, you'll see a link. I'm not quite sure where it is on the website, but if you just put in Good Gut box, I'm sure you'll find it. Or Amy, sweetheart, you'll probably pop a link. Or you've done it already. It's too fast for me on Facebook. But that takes you through to the company that we're working with. So this is a brand collaboration that we did at Liz Earle Wellbeing on the magazine with Freshly Fermented. And they're an amazing company, a British company, where they make all these incredible ferments. You know, you can buy scobies, you can buy turmeric gut bugs, you can buy sourdough starters, you know, every possible thing that's fermented you can get. And so basically use the little link, and then that will take you to the Good Gut box. But then you can add in other stuff if you want. If you want to get a yogurt maker, they have a really good yogurt maker as well. They do lots of other things as well. So do take a look. So anyway, I was reading Lula Finn's, and you got the first few words out. Lula Finn, so she's loving the Villies. That's what she means. She's talking about the thin yogurt. First ever batch of yogurt made from the Good Gut box. It's so yummy. I'm eating it without any kind of sweetener, although it was nice with a trickle of stem ginger syrup from the jar. Great, love that idea. First ever kombucha is now carbonating, and I'm already loving the taste. This is all so good. These ferments are now my little pets. Isn't that great? And actually, just a little word, if you are making all 6 of the ferments together, so that's the creme fraiche, the yogurt, the kombucha SCOBY, the yogurt, the kefir, the water kefir, the milk kefir, if you are making these all together, and maybe you've got a sourdough starter culture going on at the same time, they do like a bit of social distancing. Yeah, who knew? So you don't have to, well, you do have to put them in a mask, don't you? Because you have to cover them with a cloth. So yeah, put the mask on and keep them socially distant. And that basically stops all the different atmospheric yeasts from kind of cross-fertilizing with each other. So just keep them just in different corners of the kitchen, perhaps, or just, you know, slightly apart. Don't just kind of group them all together, bunch together. So there you go. That is a metaphor for our times, isn't it, on how to be doing our ferment safely and well. And a lovely comment here. Actually, this came in from iTunes that one of my team picked up. This is from Nikki. So Nikki, I don't know if you're watching or listening. I don't know whether you're a Facebook viewer or a YouTube viewer or maybe an Instagram watcher. But she's talking about podcasts, and you say here, I have listened to every single one of these podcasts and they are all fabulous. Well, I have to say, Nikki, that is good going, because I think we've got 180 podcasts, 180. So that'll be a moment, won't it, when we hit 200? We'll have to have a celebration for that. She says, they tell us everything we need to know about aging well, looking after our health, our well-being, our families and our planet. Here we have an endless supply of tips and tricks and excellently researched information on the menopause and many other things, helping to ensure that the second half of our lives can be even better than the first. Long may the lovely Liz Earle and her team continue to play such a much needed role in the lives of midlife women. Thank you, Liz. Well, thank you very much. It's so great actually to get reviews, and if any of you do listen to the podcasts and have yet to leave a review on iTunes, I would seriously heart it if you had a moment to, because the way that the algorithm works on Apple, particularly with iTunes, is that if you get good reviews or you get loads of 5 stars, then they just tend to push you that little bit higher up the charts, which means frankly that more people see it. It don't make any money from it, so it's not a financial thing from me, but what it is, it's about getting the message and this content out to more people. So if you haven't yet just done a little star rating, or even better, made a few lines of review, then it all does really help. And as we know, that there's a lot of information out there that we need to share. There's a lot of misinformation, and I think particularly for midlife women, there's just a lot that we can all do, can't we, to help support each other. So, oh my goodness, I just realised the time. I'm so sorry. Here am I waffling on. I'm just very quickly going to finish. Where is my apple in glass? There we go. So there you go, apple and pears. So I've got some of my crumble topping over here. This is some that I actually made earlier. Couldn't risk burning the other lot, could I? So that's what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. So I will just take a little bit of that and sprinkle that. Oops, I'm going to do this one, aren't I? Sprinkle that on the top. That's my spoon. There we go. So I'm going to take that, sprinkle that. So it's it's just like you're making a crumble here, And then I am going to add a nice generous layer of the cinnamon custard. I would normally strain this actually, just to strain the, just in case I get maybe the odd clove in there, or cardamom pod. I don't actually mind that, to be honest, but you could easily strain that. And then pop a little bit more of the crunchy topping on top. There you go, look at that. That is going to be my pudding. So I hope you enjoyed. Lovely to see you all today. Thank you very much for all your comments. Thank you for all your hearts. I will be back live on Wednesday. I'll be in my studios on Wednesday. Great new Liz Loves to share with you. Don't miss it. I'm going to be talking, I'm going to be splitting the screen and talking with one of my oldest friends in the beauty business who has an amazing beauty brand, all to do with the legs and getting our legs in fabulous shape. She's a gem to talk to and I love her range, and she's a great female founder-led British beauty brand, so lovely to give her a shout out and introduce a new Liz Loves to all of us with a great discount as well. So I hope you'll join me on Wednesday. Please keep comments coming. I don't do direct message on Instagram, but I do look at my comments and get through as many as I can. Same on Facebook and YouTube as well. So lots of love everybody. Bye for now.